And for us, it's a very concerning thing.
Tonight, 2 Winnipeg parents charged after the death of their 1-year-old daughter.
Housing's a big issue for everybody, not just us on reserves.
Plus, a new land development in Vancouver could help the housing shortage.
Well, it's always been a big part of my life, growing up in the north with a big family.
And how a Gwich'in chef is staying connected to her roots. Good evening and welcome to APTN National News. I'm Savannah Kelly. 2 Winnipeg parents have been charged with manslaughter after their 1-year-old daughter died nearly 1 year ago with high levels of fentanyl intoxication. Tamara Pimentel has more, and a warning: this story may be disturbing to some.
In March 2023, the Winnipeg Police Services Child Abuse Unit opened an investigation into the sudden death of 1-year-old Hannah Boulette. Toxicology and autopsy reports determined her death was caused by high levels of fentanyl intoxication. Gary Bruce and Sabrina Boulette were both charged with manslaughter and taken into custody. When the incident happened in March, police say the child's father called 911 after his daughter became unresponsive at their home. Paramedics gave the child CPR and she was taken to hospital where she was pronounced dead. At the time, both parents were arrested for criminal negligence causing death, and Bruce was also charged with possession of a controlled substance, and they were both released. Investigators later determined that the parents gave little detail of the incident and had been present and aware of Hannah's fentanyl exposure. Police say they waited several hours before calling 911.
The amount of time that had passed from where the parents were aware of the child's fentanyl exposure to the time that 911 was called was certainly a factor that may have played in the child's death.
WPS Constable Claude Chansey says this brings last year's homicide count for Winnipeg to 44.
We're seeing more of these incidents come through, and this is not just particular to Winnipeg. There's more occurrences you'll have noticed in other parts of Canada, and for us, it's a very concerning thing.
Chansey says both parents have had contact with police in the past and were using drugs when Hannah was exposed to fentanyl. The charges against the parents have not been tested in court. Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Conservative MP Gary Vidal has resigned as the party's critic for Indigenous services. Vidal made the announcement on X, formerly known as Twitter, late last week. He was first elected in the northern Saskatchewan riding of Disneve-Missinippi Churchill River in 2019. Vidal has served as Indigenous Services critic since 2021. APTN News reached out to the Conservative Party on Monday to see if a new Indigenous Services critic had been appointed, but did not hear back before airtime. Last week, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith announced restrictions to medical access for some transgender youth. On social media, Smith made known age limits for gender-affirming surgeries and some drug therapies. On Monday, the NDP brought the issue up in the House of Commons. During question period, Edmonton MP Blake Desjardins asked the Liberal government if they will use the Canada Health Act to intervene. Edmonton Liberal MP Randy Boissonneau responded.
Danielle Smith is denying trans kids their basic human rights by denying their access to life-saving health care. It's not the role of politicians to tell doctors how to treat patients. Meanwhile, this leader of the Conservative Party remains shamefully silent on attacks on trans rights. The hate and prejudice of some should never override the fundamental rights of others. Will this government commit to using the powers of the Canada Health Act to intervene in any denial of life-saving care for trans youth?
The Honourable Minister.
Warm, fuzzy video hiding daggers at my community in Alberta came out last week on social media. I have spent hours on the phone consoling people who are crying on the phone asking how we can stand up for the rights of 2 LGBTQ people in Alberta. Mr. Speaker, we are going to continue to work on this, and I have one message for Albertans and people across the country. Legal challenges notwithstanding, the one way we can stop this is to kill the bill before it gets to the legislature. So write to your UCP members, get fired up, mobilize, because kids' rights matter.
A fatal house fire has claimed the lives of 2 people in the Cree community of Piawanuk in northern Ontario. Anishinaabe Police Services say 2 adults were confirmed deceased as a result of the fire, while 3 others remain in the hospital for further treatment. This isn't the first fatal house fire in recent memory for the community. A 10-year-old girl died in a fire there 1 year ago. Anishinaabe Nation says federal funding was approved in 2022 for a new fire truck, but it is still not operational in the community. The community is about 780 kilometers north of Thunder Bay. The investigation into the fire is ongoing. In Manitoba, the provincial government is hoping to see that no child is left hungry while at school by investing $30 million to expand school nutrition programming.
Kids shouldn't have to go to school hungry, but for some of my peers across Manitoba, this is the case.
At a press conference held in front of students from grades 3 and 4, Premier Wabkanu announced that the investment will establish a universally accessible school nutrition program by the 2024 to 2025 school year. $15 million will go directly to school divisions for local meal programs. $6 million will go to public schools in communities with the highest socioeconomic need, and $9 million in grants for nutrition programming available on an application basis. Immediately, the Child Nutrition Council of Manitoba will also receive more than $1 million in additional grant funding for the current school year.
We go to Ashern, we're talking about a principal that shows up at 6 a.m. to bake muffins of her own volition, of her own motivation. When we go to Dauphin, we see a friendship center that's preparing with volunteers 800 meals to meet the needs of the students at the schools in town. And what we're saying is, when we're talking about young people, we're talking about kids, we're talking about education, it's important that the government step up and match that commitment.
Vancouver City Council has given the green light for 3 First Nations to develop on their traditional lands. That will have a major impact in helping the housing shortage. APTN's Tina House has this story.
We have some carvings right here as like little street posts, and obviously the totem poles. When people walk through the streets of Yelmo, they'll inherently know in the back of their minds, oh, this is the land of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh.
In 2016, the 3 First Nations surrounding the city of Vancouver bought 90 acres of land and a $480 million deal with the federal government. It's in a prime location across the street from Jericho Beach and was once the village site of Yelmouth, where many nations would gather. It sat empty until now. The city of Vancouver has approved the 3 nations to develop on their land that is going to change the beleaguered rental housing market in Vancouver. These artist renderings show what it will eventually look like, including 13,000 rentals subsidized in private condos that will welcome 24,000 residents. Spaces for commercial, light industrial, and retail businesses are expected to create over 3,000 new jobs. Childcare spaces, parks, and culturally significant social spaces, including artist studios for carving, weaving, and other activities, is going to be established. A non-traditional library and ceremonial gathering place is also part of the plan. Chief Jen Thomas of the Tsleil-Waututh Nation says she is proud of all the work to make this project happen.
Housing's a big issue for everybody, not just us on reserves. You know, we don't have space on the reserves, so this gives us an opportunity for our members even just to move back to Vancouver. You know, and it's going to be safe, affordable homes. It's going to be market homes.
So bringing on to the next generation.
William George Thomas is a cultural liaison for all 3 nations, and he was a part of the planning process.
All of the artists from all Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh are going to be all over the project, and it's really going to try and illustrate the story of Yelmo, which is where Jericho is, the story of Yelmo and how Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh have historically always been here.
It's very exciting. You know, this is a dream come true, and I'm going to go back to late Leonard George. You know, this is one of his biggest dreams, the 3 nations to come together and be developers like this in our own shared territory. I know he's smiling down on us right now.
The project will take place in phases over the next 25 to 30 years. Tina House, APTN National News, North Vancouver.
We want to hear what you think about this new housing development project or any other story you see here tonight. Here's how to continue the conversation. If you have a story you want to share, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, go to aptnnews.ca. You can find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. We need to step aside for a quick break. Coming up, a Western Arctic Gwich'in chef's passion for cooking has taken her all the way to the United Nations.
Living in the city, I always missed the food from home, the food I grew up on. And I wanted to do more with Indigenous cuisine, Indigenous culture. I wanted to share who I am and who we are as Tetlet Gwich'in people.
Welcome back to APTN National News. The Yukon government says renovations are underway for a new managed alcohol program in downtown Whitehorse, with the goal of opening the program in the spring. The program will be administered at a former group home, which has space for up to 10 live-in clients. Staff will provide those with severe alcohol dependency with medically prescribed doses of alcohol at regular intervals. The program was developed in close collaboration with several community partners, including First Nations governments. Yukon government says the territory has high rates of alcohol consumption, which are among the highest in Canada. Yukon's Director of Mental Wellness and Substance Use Services says there's a number of benefits to the program.
When people get stabilized and have alcohol in a dosed out fashion, they increase their family relationships. There's an increased ability to care for medical issues in a proactive way and not a reactive way. They engage more with the community, and also I think one of the most important things is for human beings, they report just having better quality of life.
They say food is the route to staying connected to culture. That's what a Western Arctic Gwich'in woman has done since she moved away to BC to pursue a culinary career that's led her to the United Nations as a chef and educator. And her home community back home supports her through her jerky while inspiring youth back home to education in the culinary field. Carly Schogner has this story.
Food's always been a big part of my life. Growing up in the north with a big family, always seeing my mom cooking, my Juju, my grandmother cooking, seeing how my community gathers around food.
Stephanie Barlock grew up in the small Western Arctic Gwich'in community of Tetleje, Fort McPherson. Now she's raising her family in the Vancouver area.
Right up here is Tetleje, Fort McPherson. That's where I grew up. I live down here in Tsawwassen, BC, and I am heading to Rome, Italy, which is on this little... Living in the city, I always missed the food from home, the food I grew up on. And I wanted to do more with Indigenous cuisine, Indigenous culture. I wanted to share who I am and who we are as Tetlet Gwich'in people. Along came the opportunity here at Simon Fraser University to create an Indigenous food program.
From creamy wild rice spruce tip soup to venison sausage and dandelion pasta, her passion for food led her to spearhead and create the program, which provides storytelling and values around food.
When I cook, there's usually a story behind the dish. So whether it's one ingredient, whether it's 3 ingredients in the dish, there's going to be a story that I can tell you, or maybe you can share with me.
Chef Steph's awesome. We just had to bring her on board full time. We offer the Indigenous dishes every 2 weeks right now, right? We're looking to increase that. We have people coming in asking for it specifically, right? On even on days where we are not normally offering it.
Indigenous knowledge with our food security is what sustains our people.
Barlock has presented her menus and educational program in Rome twice. twice, in July and October, at the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization's Global Indigenous Youth Forum.
I think a lot of the issues these days with food security, food sovereignty, and food waste, and I think that's the biggest thing, is connection through food. Sometimes we get lost in, not really giving the appreciation to the ingredients, how they're collected, harvested, so I think we need to get back into doing that.
During the pandemic in 2022, Barlick, homesick, decided to start making beef jerky with what ingredients she had and to send some home.
These bins would be full of the jerky, and so she just sends it up in the... She sent it up, and I put it on Facebook that I had it, and she did too, and it just sold. People liked it, and then they kept buying more.
It took off immediately. People now post around the world with Mrs. B's jerky.
The jerky she makes, she wanted to try that because of making caribou dry meat, which is everyone loves. I don't know anyone who doesn't like caribou dry meat. 2 that are left, and that's it, out of 186 bags. So that's pretty good if you ask me. It's very inspirational for me to see her putting so much work and effort and research into her cooking, because she does go back to her roots as being Gwich'in. Caribou provided everything: food, shelter, clothing, everything you needed.
Barlick's work has inspired others, including her niece, who is now in culinary school.
She is one of my inspirations, and I do look up to her. Just because, she's from a small town like me. And she left, and now she's a chef at a university in Indigenous cuisine. And she's out here doing bigger things.
Learning business skills, she says she hopes to start her own food business back home, while there is little to no food industry in the region. She encourages others to continue their education.
Anybody's debating on if they whether she should move, leave home. It is hard being so far away from home. But then also you have so much people behind you and that are so proud of you, and it just makes you feel so productive, and it just makes you feel so good once you're done your first semester.
Barlick is starting a weekly community kitchen on Vancouver downtown east side starting February 5th. Then she is hosting an Indigenous-inspired reception in Austin, Texas for the South by South Film and TV Festival early March.
It's made me realize that this work is more meaningful than just work to me. It's a chance for me to share who we are. It's a chance for me to show maybe other Indigenous cooks and chefs that we could do these things. We belong in these spaces.
Carly Schogner, APTN National News, Inuvik.
Looks absolutely delicious. Well, we need to take one more quick break, but still to come. A Mi'kmaq community declares a state of emergency after a massive snowstorm in Nova Scotia. Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. Today's photo comes courtesy of Adeline Auger. She wanted to share a beautiful picture from her travels through northern Alberta. Stay safe and warm out there, Adeline. Thanks for the picture. Remember, you can send your pics to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Over on the East Coast, 0 degrees and snowy for Charlottetown, 2 degrees in Halifax. Nain, -9 and sunshine there. Kuujjuaq, snowy and -6. Montreal, sunshine, -3 there. Saguenay, -10. North Bay, sunshine and 1 degree there. Sarnia, +4. Thunder Bay, 3 degrees. Mix of sun and clouds. Sioux Lookout, 3 degrees and rainy. Churchill, sunshine, -24. Puckatawagan, -18. Brandon, rainy and 2 degrees there. Barons River, +3. Yorkton, snowy and 1 degree there. North Battleford, -3. Stony Rapids, sunny and -21. Buffalo Narrows, snowy and -11. Snowy and -8 for Fort McMurray, Peace River -5. Red Deer snowy and -6 there, Lethbridge 0 degrees. Penticton rainy and +7, Kamloops sunshine and 6 degrees. Fort Nelson -13 there, Smithers snowy and -3. Watson Lake -13 there, Mayo -20. Norman Wells sunshine and -23, Watee snowy and -18. Paulatuck snowy there and -19 degrees, Colville Lake -25. Baker Lake sunshine and -32, Nauyat -28. Arctic Bay snowy and -19 there, Resolute sunshine and -25. Parts of Nova Scotia were buried under a mountain of snow as a powerful snowstorm blasted the province over the weekend, leaving one Mi'kmaq community snowed in and declaring a state of emergency. Angel Moore reports.
I'm here in Jabuktuk, Mi'kmaq for Halifax. People have been digging out after a multi-day snowstorm. Unamagi, Mi'kmaq for Cape Breton, has declared a state of emergency. It was hit with up to 150 centimeters of snow in some areas, including the Eskazoni First Nation. It declared a state of emergency after the community's snow removal equipment became stuck or could not continue operations, and emergency vehicles are unable to access the community. The band is requesting the province to help clear the snow, and Indigenous Services Canada to provide emergency support to community members. Most schools, government offices remain closed, with power outages across the province. People are asked to stay off the roads until the snow can be removed. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Jabuktuk, also known as Halifax.
A fresh blast of winter has turned streets and sidewalks in Calgary into a snowy mess as well.
We're going to be focused on plowing through lanes on those roads and applying materials.
City crews in Calgary are busy clearing roads and pathways after the latest blast of winter weather. Police report more than 90 crashes between Saturday evening and late Sunday afternoon. And outside the city, things weren't much better, with a number of cars stuck in the ditch along the QE2 near Olds. But not everyone was upset to see the snow return.
I never got to do this when I was growing up because I'm from a place where it never snows. So this is pretty exciting because I can be a child again.
Toboggan Hills were packed. The Chinook Blast celebrity curling event at Olympic Plaza was canceled due to snow safety concerns. But the snow didn't stop some hardy runners from taking part in the dead cold run at St. Patrick's Island Park in spite of the snowy conditions. Ottawa's Winterlude festivities continue with a miniature powwow taking place at the Canadian Museum of Natural History. Multiple First Nations communities gathered at the Grand Hall for the afternoon event. Organizers say the goal of the powwow, the second to run during Winterlude, is to increase interest in First Nation culture and history. And that's all the time we have for your Monday news. For news anytime, visit our website at aptnnews.ca. I'm Savannah Kelly. Marcy, Miigwech, thank you for joining us tonight. Take care and have a great night.